Welcome to Season 2 of the Focused Athlete Podcast, where we talk to high-performing athletes, coaches, and business leaders and learn how they put emotional intelligence into action.
Welcome back to the Focused Athlete Podcast with EI Focus. I am your host, Kate. Today, I have the privilege of being joined by Jazlen Green, former Division I athlete, graduated from UC Berkeley, went on to get her master's from San Diego State, and the founder of Mental Vision. So I would love you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your basketball journey. What led you to Berkeley? What led you to San Diego State?
Yeah, so I'm from California. I'm from the IE, but more specifically, I'm from Upland, California. And then I also would say that I'm from Pasadena, California. And like if there was a hyphenated aspect to where we're from, I would definitely throw Pasadena in there only because I spent a lot of time in my, childhood years, going to church there. My first basketball team was in Pasadena. So there was just a lot of quality time spent in Pasadena that I felt mold me into the person that I am. Although I, stayed in Upland and I went to school in the Upland School District, I still felt like there was part of me that lived in Pasadena when it came down to it. But yeah, I come from a family of five. I have four siblings, mom, dad, grandmother, awarded and afforded a niece and two nephews, however you want to see that. And yeah, started playing basketball when I was really young. And how I got to Berkeley, obviously, like my high school journey, my career in itself is one that is very individual and legendary. Some might call it legendary. I didn't get the opportunity to play AAU or, have the resources that a lot of my peers were able to have. And yeah, I had my first knee surgery, my first major knee surgery when I was 17. So that was my junior year. So the recruitment aspect of my journey definitely had one with a lot of holes and a lot of different stipulations as far as like getting to college. And though I really only played one full year of high school basketball, that senior year coming after my surgery, it was kind of like, do or die. I had to do everything I could to get the attention from the college recruits, get the hype as far as like trying to create the hype for myself. And in the summer, by the end of the summer, I was able to gain some attention. Me and my brother, we were just sending out a bunch of emails, everything that I played, every camp, every tournament that we had in the summer, we just clipped everything and sent over like 100 emails. And by the end of that summer, I ended up getting an offer from San Luis Obispo, Cal Poly Slow.
Mhm.
And then within the first recruitment period, because there's two like signing periods or like recruitment periods when it comes to being recruited. And then that first one is around like November-ish when this first signing period ends. A lot of people don't know this, but I actually committed to go play at Long Beach State. But when I had called, they only had one scholarship that they offered to me and this other girl that I now know. But that back then I didn't know that they had offered it to somebody else. So crazy enough, ironic enough, 2 hours before I called, she called and committed, so I couldn't have that scholarship. So I didn't end up going, obviously playing for the Long Beach State Niners and whatever. So yeah, so I was just doing everything that I can to, like I said, get myself in a position to get recruited again and do, get the scholarship offered. And thankfully, we had the opportunity to play at the Nike TLC tournament in December, which was in Arizona. And obviously, that was a high place where recruits came, to watch these high school teams come and compete, some of the best from all over. And, a lot of them didn't realize that I was playing again because the last time that they had seen me was when I was a sophomore. I only played like 8 games my sophomore year, but during that time it was in the open division. And, just for a lot of people who don't know what the open division is, it's basically the highest division in high school.
Mhm.
But other than that, if it wasn't for that Nike TLC tournament, I don't think I would have or been afforded the opportunities to be seen by some of these high collegiate programs. And then, while I was at the tournament, I was able to acquire, offers from University of Washington. We had another tournament maybe a week or two after that in San Francisco where I was able to acquire an offer from Cal. And another thing, part of my story is like I did want to go to Cal. Like before I even knew about like how the recruitment process, worked and what was, I had this this feeling or this cleanness to Cal because one, it was a prestigious university, and I knew that I needed to make a decision about my recruitment as far as what was going to set me up long term because I knew basketball wasn't going to be my forever. And Cal was always one of those things. I used to go back watching YouTube videos on campus tours and like, it was part of the Pac-12 at that time. So like I just felt like academically and athletically, like I was going to get the best of both worlds. So that's how I ended up at Cal. And then obviously I graduated, did my 4 years there and played 2 years, through injury and stuff like that. And then was able to come to San Diego State and get my master's.
That's awesome. That's a wonderful story. And it sounds like a lot of it was, done independently and self-led. Would you say that that independence, starting at a younger age and coming back from injury kind of led you on this path towards growing your own brand and starting Mental Vision? And would you tell us a little bit about that and how you started Mental Vision and what kind of brought you to this?
Yeah, so I would definitely say, just my life that I've had, even as a very young child, age 8 to 7, age 7 to 8, I really kind of knew a lot about resilience and just what it needed to be in order to get where you wanted to go and like prioritizing the importance of, structure and like goals and, discipline very young. So I would definitely say the foundation that I had as a child just like ultimately set me up for all the trials and tribulations and the obstacles that I was gonna have to later in my life endure. And yeah, with mental vision, obviously like part of my story is being a student athlete my entire life and what that calls and the demands of that life and how it shaped me, mentally and what came with that. But part of my story is just my mental health journey and what I've, been through and the experiences that I've had with my mental illness and not only my mental illness, but those that I was really close to, those that I love mental illness, and later inspired mental vision to come to light. Obviously, my journey with being a student athlete, it came with a lot of rigorous activity that
Mhm.
puts a lot on you spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and makes you have to, tap into those internalness things that's inside of you to get you geared up and fired up for the next day, especially, going to Cal, being in the classroom while also trying to maintain and sustain that heightened level of competitiveness and just putting yourself in a position to be a competitor and to be able to measure yourself to your competitors. But yeah, mental vision was also honestly just like created and inspired by just real life experiences that I've seen that I've lived through, and just seeing the need and the severity of what mental health really is and the depths of how far it can go and the lack of awareness and knowledge that people have. Like I said, it wasn't just about my own experiences, it was about the people that I love or was in love with, the people that I come from, my family, just seeing how it definitely was detrimental in my life and how it never ever got the attention that it so desperately needed.
That's a wonderful point. And that's one of the things that we definitely work for at EI Focus is just awareness of emotional intelligence. Of course, that's our niche, but just
Hmm.
mental health as a whole doesn't get very much attention. And we're so lucky today that it's getting more attention.
Hmm.
Um, and I'd love to just ask you more of what you've been doing with mental vision and what kind of goals you see for yourself in the future.
Yeah, so this kind of I had a desire to do healthcare work or mental health care work
Mhm.
for a long time. I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know what path I needed to take. So in about 2024, I had went to this conference for Black student athletes called uh, I'm blanking right now, but it was a Black Student Athlete Summit. So
Mhm.
I think it's like BSA.
Mhm.
And one of the classes that I took was about entrepreneurship. And I was just talking to them, to these, entrepreneurs who've, put some time into their career from different, industries. And I was just telling them about my desires on helping people when it comes to mental health and like getting into schools. Like I knew that I wanted to start in schools and helping high school students more particularly, get the knowledge and the education when it comes to them taking care of their mental health and teaching them how to apply that same knowledge and education to their peers. So then it becomes like a pattern of wellness that's being spread around throughout, the high schools or the communities. And like I said, I didn't know what path I needed to take or what that looked like or how I could get it done. I just knew that I had a voice, I had a story, and I knew that, I wanted to help people. So this kind of like been brewing for the last year and some change. And it started out of me like, okay, let's start, going into high schools, having, creating partnerships with high schools locally, which was in San Diego at the time. And I was able to get connected with Hoover through one of my academic advisor who has his own nonprofit called Athlete Academy, and he connected me with the athletic director. And there was like we were on, momentum or on a trail to, actually put in this program, this curriculum, 4-week curriculum, basically teaching the students how to have self-advocacy, taking care of yourself first, and then applying that to your peers, and then applying that to your community, and then in return, how to do the same work that I'm trying to teach them within their self individually to do on their own in their own time. So it was this program that was created for them to, like I said, to have that standard and foundation for themselves, to keep them self-centered as far as their mental health and having a lot of awareness, because a lot of what people don't understand is mental health and mental illness is about having awareness.
Mhm.
And at first, honestly, the name that I had came out with when I first was like, creating this idea and this path to entrepreneurship, I started out with fundamental health, and it was spelled funda, and then mental was capitalized, and then health, obviously. The reason being because to me, mental health is just as fundamental as anything else in life, and you need to have the basics and understand the basics about mental health to understand then the more complicated aspect of it. But through a lot of branding and reworking, I got to mental vision because one, I didn't want it to just be seen as an educational tool. I wanted to, it to be seen as a creative tool, as a marketing strategy, just to better communicate with my peers, better communicate with the market, better communicate with the people who see business as a constant, shift in just the time that is coming. I wanted to be able to stand within time, and I felt like just the urbanization of the way it's spelled and how it's direct, but it also gets you thinking in some kind of way, tailored to mental vision and how I got to mental vision. But yeah, so some of the work that I've been doing, like I said, most of my work has been tailored to high school students, but that wasn't never the end goal was to just get into high schools. The end goal was to help as many people as I can, whether that was students, whether that was athletes, whether that was HR, whatever the case may be, any societal context that has people in it. That's where I wanted to get, my brand and my mission and my movement into. And some of the work like I've been afforded was in the high school, speaking at high schools on panels, podcast that I was able to do recently, a couple weeks ago, and just getting the word out, getting the message out, having the conversation, cultivating these conversations, creating the safeness in these conversations so more conversations could be had. More recently, I was able to connect with a district out here in Ontario and had a great presentation, as far as like leading, my movement and my mission through the districts, even in middle schools, because the district I'm working in is in middle schools, but still the need for mental health resources and attention is still vital, not only in middle school students or, elementary students, but just in the administration office and the building of these board members and these superintendents and these directors and such and such. So luckily I was able to partner with them and get a contract, contractual partnership with them, basically coming in there, leading the students, mentoring the students, creating a space to where, like I said, they feel safe enough, creating that demand, for attention for like therapy or resources or just like conversation tools that they don't necessarily have, or people or children who are in that transition period of trying to figure out who they are on top of the mental health aspect. So that's what I've been doing, more recently, and hopefully, like moving forward, I'm able to do more of that, partnering with, whether it's districts, whether it's with, like I said, employment offices or whatever. I've also had talks with the LAPD. Some people that work in the LAPD, they have suicide prevention and awareness in their, department, but even getting connected with them. It's just really about putting my best foot forward as far as bringing awareness. And part of my business is about bridging the gap between awareness and creativity and how that may be different in all contextual aspects.
That's such a beautiful connection as well. And just the creative aspect, I feel like, of your brand and how you've kind of cultivated it to be a visual representation as well as something powerful that can connect to young people and people of all ages. I mean, that's amazing work, and I
Yeah.
applaud you for doing that.
Oh man, man.
Wonderful.
I'm just doing what I know I can do. Like I'm a very expressive person. A lot of people
Mhm.
know that. Like I'm so authentic to myself and like a lot of people, depending on how they get introduced to me, whether that's on the basketball court, whether that's through social media, like they only get like piece of who I am, and that's their perception. But I'm so many things. To me, I feel like I'm the representation of duality. I don't fit
Yeah.
in a box, and I don't ever suggest anybody try to fit in a box, create their own boxes that they want to fit into and hop into. But that creativity piece, like what it is or what I've learned about mental health or even just like wellness and getting people to take better care of themselves, they have to do it more tailored to their life. And you have to have that flexibility and be able to be flexible and understanding that when it comes to mental health or when it comes to wellness in general, and part of that I've learned that through just even talking in the high schools, like these young women, 15, 16-year-olds finding relatability to me and my story based on just feeling like they're related to what I've gone through, whether it's somebody that they know close in their circle or that they're living it through their life, their individual life.
Mhm.
And like I said, it's just more so seeing somebody and saying, okay, like that looks like me in some sort of sense. Maybe not physically, maybe not, black, maybe not, playing a sport or whatever, but they have some of the same experiences that I have. And that's what it's about too. I think a lot of the questions that I get to when I'm, presenting or I'm offering, these services to people is like, what makes you different? And I will always tell people like, one, I can say I do make myself different beside my competitors because I've lived through the things that I'm speaking about. I've actually
Mhm.
sat in those hospitals. I actually did the progress. I've actually been diagnosed. I actually had these experiences. So I'm able to relate on a much more larger scale than, my competitors. And I think that's what sets me aside. I mean, a lot of people tell me now I'm an anomaly, but like I honestly believe that, and like that's what you'll get in my brand.
Yeah. And it's that confidence tied in with that personal experience.
Yeah,
I think that's just a wonderful combination.
yeah, yes. Because I'm not ashamed. I'm not ashamed of the things
No.
that I've been through. But there are people who are, and like,
Mhm.
and it prevents them from, taking steps forward. And and that's what I'm using my experiences and the things, my truths, to push other people to live in their truths.
That's a beautiful message. I love that. Um, Kind of switching gears, circling back to emotional intelligence. Um, One of the questions that we like to ask everyone that comes on the podcast is how do you define emotional intelligence? And we kind of discuss this a little bit um, in the way that, everyone is managing their own things differently, and you have to tailor things to yourself and what your experiences are. So we like to ask everyone, how do you define emotional intelligence? What does it mean to you?
Like for me, honestly, because a lot of people tell me like I'm really emotionally mature and I have emotional intelligence. And some of the things that they're, you know, pointing out in particular, I feel like are the most simplest things. And
Hmm.
it comes from one, being so selfless. I think emotional intelligence comes from having that character aspect to be so selfless and your own, not only about your own emotions, because like you gotta let it out. Like you just gotta let your emotions out and like not hold permanence into those emotions, first of all, and understand that they're their own things as well. But to have emotional intelligence, I feel like you have to be selfless in understanding that the same thing for everybody else. Like you got to be able to see their emotions as their own thing and tailor it to the conclusion of like what it is to like understand people emotionally and just having awareness. I think emotional intelligence is about having like that deep awareness to one, to better understand yourself so then you could better understand people, but you have to have that selflessness. Like you can't be so selfish and taking care of yourself because there is power in being selfish to a T. But if you
Mhm.
take that to a whole nother level to where it's a personality thing rather than just something that you work on or work through, you can't have emotional intelligence. That's just my opinion because I feel like when people are, making that assumption about me or label me as emotionally intelligent is because I'm not thinking about myself. I do think about my emotions and I have boundaries for myself and I know boundaries, but I never just tailor it to myself. I never just tailor it about myself. And I think that comes with like honestly that maturity aspect too of realizing that it's not just about you. But I think it's so crucial in our spaces that we create, whether that's professional, relationships, social, whatever, to have that emotional awareness and intelligence because it then calls for better communication throughout our communities. It calls for better communication throughout our relationships. And like I said, it's that awareness piece. Like you have to be so aware to the fact of what you are and what you feel, but also understanding that somebody has something completely different. You know what I'm saying? And it's being able to see through that and see past yourself. Like you really got to see past yourself. So I would say emotional intelligence has a lot to do with selfless acts and selfish mindset, to be able to understand everybody's emotions, not just yours. And like, it doesn't even have to be the most complicated thing. It could be so simple, it could be the simplest things. But I definitely think that in order to be emotional intelligent, you have to be selfless.
That's a great point. And so, as an athlete and being someone who operates in a team setting, what would you say are maybe common values that you hold within yourself and you uphold for your teammates, or maybe tools that you use to practice emotional intelligence and practice that selflessness in a team setting?
I think honestly, understanding that I'm not perfect and like I'm gonna make mistakes, I'm gonna get it wrong. But my intentions is to be perfect. My intentions is to always do my best, even if I miss a step or two. And that goes from, spiritually, physically, mentally, like even in the athletic community. Like I've been a captain most of my time throughout both universities. I was a captain of I think 2 years, 3 years when I was at Cal. Well, 2 years technically. I was a captain 2 years at Cal. And then I was a captain here at San Diego State. And like I think all my teams would tell you, especially here at San Diego State, because they were a lot younger than me as far as like it was a lot more, younger, relatively younger people on our team as far as me. I was like a 6 year transfer. So I had some game in the game, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And they would definitely tell you like I'm a hard person when it comes to like winning, first of all, the winning culture. Like I'm gonna do my best and I'm gonna do whatever it takes to win. And sometimes like if I can physically show it, I'm gonna physically show it. But if I can mentally show it, I'm gonna mentally show it. And I'm gonna always be consistent in that. Like I said, as far as me dealing with injuries, I'm not always gonna be able to, be the example by action, but I'm gonna push everybody to look past themselves. Like I said, it goes back to that selfless need. Looking past yourself. Why are you even doing it in the first place? Why are you even here? Having that understanding of what's important. Like, if you just showing up and just trying to, put your hours in, you wasting time. At that point, you shouldn't be here. But if you're emotionally intentional and you're physically intentional and you understand that with that intention, you want to do your best, you're not going to take no shortcuts. And that even comes with having that emotional intelligence on the court. I don't allow, first of all, I don't take things personal when it comes to sports because it's sports. Like when I knew that ever since I was a young kid, when I was in any space of athletics, whether that was on the court or in the weight room, like I'm in there to get work done. I'm in there to take care of my business and call it that. Everything that I had outside going on, and there was a lot of things during high school that I've dealt with. There was a lot of things during college that I've dealt with. But when it came to actually playing and actually showing up and getting better, I always put my best foot forward. And then I also, in return, put help or was intentional about making sure my teammates put their best foot forward, even when they didn't want to, because there were times when they didn't want to go hard or didn't have the rep or didn't want to talk more than I was talking. I had to push a lot of that out of them. But I never once, took it personal. Like I just made sure that I was being consistent in what I was giving and what my output was. And then also, like I said, I have boundaries within myself. At some point, I will like check myself throughout that time and say, okay, like if I'm doing too much, let me take a step back. How can I show up, individually for my teammates, but also reading into them individually because how you might, think you're coaching one person is not going to work for the other person. And just having, like I said, having that awareness that it's not just about you and having that flexibility to understand that it's not just about you. But emotionally, as far as like the game itself, like I never took it personal. Like as far as wanting to win and like what it what it took to win. Like I never took those things personal because it had nothing to do with who I was as an individual. It just had just a lot to do with who I was as an individual in this aspect of sports. You know what I'm saying? But my peers, it comes from a level of maturity to understand that. And I think even with emotional intelligence, it comes with a level of maturity to consistently practice that.
I love that. And I love what you kind of were talking about at the beginning there, holding yourself to some high standards, but also giving yourself grace to not meet them.
Yeah, because like I always been like that my entire life. Like even when I started playing basketball, like at a very young age, I was ingrained and indebted of what greatness was. Like I knew that if I was gonna play basketball, I didn't want to just play basketball to play basketball. Like I wanted to be great at it. I wanted to be the best at it. I wanted to surround myself with the best, play with the best. Part of the reason why, like I could have it was a reason why I didn't go to Long Beach State for a reason, and not to say there's anything wrong with mid majors. Like I played at San Diego State for a reason. It was just more so like I wanted to be pushed. I wanted to be pushed to my most highest heights that I could possibly get, reach my highest potential. I didn't ever want to take no days off. I didn't ever want to slack. I was so motivated by the no's. I was so motivated by the lack of resources. I was just so motivated by the things that I didn't acquire like everybody else. But I had this expectation of myself and I had it gracefully. Like you can have these expectations of yourself and do it with grace, like, and do it on your own time and not put so much pressure on yourself. And, like, I don't know, as a kid, it was always just normal for me to think like, oh, I just want to be like the best. I want to be part of the best, regardless of what that is. So, those did come with a lot of grace and a lot of sensitivity to myself and like not allowing all the outside noise dictate my movement, dictate my steps and where I was going.
That's a great point. And then, of course, kind of transitioning to your point about just as a kid and having those goals for yourself, what advice would you give to a younger athlete who could be struggling?
Um, I would definitely tell them to one, settle in the fact that you're a very multidimensional person. Like recess is recess, but the classroom is the classroom. And, you have all these different things that drive your excitement, your thrill, like, your curiosity drives all these different things of you to settle into that and not be afraid of all these things that you're tied to. But I definitely say you have to have some type of dictation and what you choose to do as far as choosing those things that bring you excitement and thrill and curiosity and sticking with it. Like, I feel like there is so much power, and you could find multiple things, whether that's one thing, two things, or three things, but there's so much power in being consistent in the things that you choose. So, whether that's basketball, whether that's arts or music, if you know that it is tailoring some part of you that makes you happy, makes you curious, makes you just more want to like see it more or unlock more, settle in it and don't be afraid that you have this gift of being so, relatable to so many different things. You just got to choose. You have to be able to choose and you have to be able to make choices and decisions because that's going to be a thing that's going to happen throughout your life as a young adult, as an adult. You have to get to that mindset of being able to make that choice because it is about choice. It is about you. Even at a young age, you have choice. But if you want to propel in whatever choice that you make, you have to consistently, and that's a big word, is consistently put in that effort, put in that intention, put in that detail to making sure that it fulfills you over time and sustainably do that over time.
That's a wonderful point. And then just kind of wrapping up. So, what's next for you and what's next for Mental Vision?
Oh, what's next for me is hopefully acquiring more contracts, hopefully building a team. I would love to build a team. This is a lot. Being an
Yeah.
entrepreneur, it is a lot. And I knew that when I started it, but I never like even the reason why I play, basketball. I love working in teams. I love leading teams. I was captain.
Hmm.
But I understand the power in doing something with a group of people rather doing it alone. So hopefully for me, I'm, creating that team over time and like I said, we're acquiring more contracts, we're helping more people, we're getting more resources for the people that we're trying to help. And just like I said, bringing more awareness and cultivating more conversations and shifting this culture behind mental health and how people are, you know, putting themselves behind it and pushing the movement forward, through creativity. So whether that's in music, whether that's in art, whether that's in sports, we're tailoring it to whatever community we can and however we can do it. Like I said, doing more stuff in the districts, hopefully connecting more with districts and, people in the educational industry. Like I said, I want to do stuff with the LAPD, hopefully getting into the law as well. Like I said, the main goal is to just help as many people as we can from wherever they come from. And that I feel like what's next for me is also what's next for Mental Vision. I'm doing all those things, while also extending that proprietorship to mental vision as well. But yeah, it's just about like creating more opportunities for myself, for my brand, and just the people that wants to be a part of it.
Well, I look forward to seeing what your
Yes,
next moves
yes,
are.
yes.
And then our final question that we just like to ask everyone, what is something fun and positive that you do just for you?
There's a lot of different things, honestly. Sometimes I draw still, sometimes I write. Like I said, I create now that, everything is like about my brand. I'm trying to find new ideas. I'm constantly, progressing the ideas that are happening in my head and trying to make steps forward to, creating the vision that I have these ideas from. I like going on walks. I think walking is so like reviving in so many
Yeah.
different ways, whether it's just by yourself or with other people, like just walking, wherever that may be, hiking. I just don't like to be still. That's the thing.
Mhm.
I really don't like to be still, and I really love using my mind in whatever capacity. I love reading. I'm just a very multidimensional person. So it could be from dancing. I love dancing. Like if I can go dance or be somewhere with loud music and just be myself, I would do that. If I had a bike, I would be biking everywhere. Like, I just love being active. I just love being creative, and I just love learning, honestly.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today
Thank
and
you. Thank
for
you for
having such
having
insightful
me.
thoughts. It was amazing.
I hope I made sense. Sometimes like because I be going on tangents and I vent a lot or I be rambling a lot, sometimes I'm like, does it make sense? Because to me in my head, it makes sense. But
It makes sense.
I don't know if everybody can translate the things that I'm saying sometimes, and I have to be mindful of that. But like I hopefully it made sense. I hope I wasn't rambling too much. Like I try my best to concise a lot of what I was saying.
Yeah.
So
No, it makes sense.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today on the Focused Athlete podcast. We would love to stay connected, and so please follow us on Instagram at EI_focus, on Facebook at EI Focus, on our LinkedIn page at EI Focus, and for lots more information and upcoming events, www.eifocus.org. Thank you so much, and see you at the next podcast.